Imagine standing at street level in Mumbai, looking up and up and up at a private skyscraper so tall, so bizarre, and so extravagant, it looks like it belongs in a science fiction movie. This isn't a hotel. It's not a five-star spa. It's not a government building. It's a private home built for just one family. It's called Antilia, and it's 27 stories tall, though it's designed to match the scale of a 60-story skyscraper. Every floor is custom built. No two are the same height. From a distance, it looks like giant glass boxes stacked like Jenga blocks by a billionaire architect who got bored halfway through. Inside, it's pure madness. There are 3 helipads on the roof, a 6th-floor garage for 168 luxury cars, a snow room that pumps artificial blizzards during India's 100-degree summers, multiple spas, yoga studios, a ballroom lined with crystal chandeliers, private cinemas, floating gardens, marble sourced from Italy, hand-woven rugs from Kashmir. Over 600 full-time staff members are employed to run the place. Housekeepers, chefs, engineers, guards, even specialists who manage the air filtration system, because apparently even the air has to be elite. And the price tag? Over $2 billion, making it the second most expensive residential property on Earth, second only to Buckingham Palace. All for a family of 6. Now imagine spending $100 million on your son's wedding. And that's not even the shocking part. The guest list included Beyoncé, Hillary Clinton, and nearly all of Bollywood's elite. Private jets lined the runways. A city was practically shut down. And yet in a country where millions still live in slums, this display wasn't just opulent, it was controversial. This is the world of the Ambanis, India's richest, most powerful dynasty. A family so obscenely wealthy, their private celebrations shut down cities. Their business moves sway global markets, and their home has become a symbol of something much bigger. Because behind this skyscraper lies a story of oil money, sibling feuds, billion-dollar monopolies, and the quiet transformation of one man into the most powerful figure in India. But to understand how a former gas station clerk's family ended up living in a billion-dollar tower above the clouds, we have to go back to where it all began. Before there was Antilia, before the billions, the weddings, or the scandals, there was a boy named Dhirubhai. Born in 1932 in a dusty village in Gujarat, Western India, Dhirubhai Ambani didn't come from money. His father was a school teacher. The family lived simply, too simply. Meals were often little more than lentils and rice. Electricity was unreliable. And ambition? That was a luxury no one had time for. But Dhirubhai was different. Even as a teenager, he had that dangerous glint in his eye, that mixture of curiosity, hunger, and restlessness that doesn't just want a better life, it demands it. So at the age of 17, he packed his bags and left India. His destination? A Shell gas station in Aden, Yemen. There, while pumping fuel in the heat of the Arabian desert, Dhirubhai studied the flow of oil and money. He watched traders, took notes, observed how wealth moved, not just in products but in networks, timing, and ambition. And when he finally returned to India, he had one goal: build something so big it would make the world pay attention. He started small, really small, just a few bundles of polyester yarn, imported cheaply, sold quickly. From there, he launched Reliance Commercial Corporation, operating out of a 500-square-foot office in Mumbai with 1 table, 3 chairs, and a rotary phone. But the way Dhirubhai worked was anything but ordinary. He wasn't just selling fabric, he was selling a vision of India as a self-made industrial superpower, of an Indian businessman who could beat the Western monopolies at their own game. Dhirubhai was infamous for his calculated aggression. He cultivated deep ties with politicians, journalists, and bureaucrats. He would bend regulations, outsmart rivals, flood markets, manufacture scarcity, outbid, outmaneuver, outlast. His mantra was simple: think big, think fast, think ahead. By the 1980s, Reliance wasn't just a textile company. It had gone public. It had millions of small investors. And it was expanding into petrochemicals, a move that would cement Dhirubhai as a kingmaker in Indian business. Factories began rising from the ground like fortresses. Pipelines, refineries, and supply chains started weaving across the country. The Indian middle class began wearing Reliance-made clothes, cooking with Reliance-made plastics, and investing their savings into Reliance shares. And through it all, Dhirubhai's face became a symbol of hustle, of ambition, of the Indian dream. But behind the scenes, something was brewing. Because Dhirubhai wasn't building this empire alone. Watching him closely were his two sons, Mukesh and Anil. Mukesh the elder was quiet, calculating, and intensely private. He had studied chemical engineering at Stanford and preferred spreadsheets to speeches. His strength was operations, running massive industrial sites, streamlining the
back end of billion-dollar businesses.
Anil, on the other hand, was the charmer, a sharp dresser, smooth talker, Harvard-educated, comfortable with the media. He was the one seen on magazine covers, rubbing shoulders with Bollywood stars and global CEOs. Dhirubhai kept them both close, but not equal. Mukesh was being trained to inherit the core of Reliance: energy, infrastructure, manufacturing. Anil, meanwhile, was being positioned more in finance and telecom, the newer, shinier sectors. Still, as long as Dhirubhai was alive, the balance held. But in 2002, tragedy struck. Dhirubhai suffered a second stroke, and this time he didn't survive. No will, no written succession plan, no formal separation of assets. What followed was a silent civil war between the brothers. Whispers turned into boardroom leaks. Anonymous quotes appeared in newspapers. Shareholders grew anxious. Executives picked sides. Stock prices swayed with each new headline. One brother wanted control, the other refused to step aside. It was India's richest family feud, unfolding in real time, on the front pages of newspapers, in the lobbies of five-star hotels, and behind the glass walls of skyscrapers. The tension grew so unbearable it was their mother, Kokilaben, who finally stepped in. She orchestrated a truce, a formal split of the empire. Mukesh would keep the old economy, the oil, gas, petrochemicals, and infrastructure. Anil would take the new economy, telecom, entertainment, power, and financial services. It looked like a fair deal, but only one of them would turn his share into a monopoly, and the other? He'd soon be in headlines for all the wrong reasons. To see how Mukesh transformed his half of the empire into something far bigger than his father ever imagined, we have to look at the move that would make him not just the richest man in India, but a digital emperor. For a while, it looked like the Ambani brothers were destined to rule together. On paper, they had it all: education from the world's top universities, business empires laid at their feet, the trust of India's most revered industrialist, Dhirubhai Ambani. But what no one saw, what even their closest advisors missed, was the collision course quietly forming behind the scenes, because Mukesh and Anil Ambani were not cut from the same cloth. Mukesh was the elder, stoic, focused, a behind-the-scenes architect of the empire. He didn't chase headlines, he chased infrastructure. When he spoke, it was in numbers, forecasts, and strategy. His strength wasn't charm, it was control. Anil was different, charismatic, sharp-witted, always surrounded by flashbulbs and press microphones. He understood markets, yes, but he also understood optics. He gave interviews, walking red carpets. For a while, India saw him as the future of Reliance. But when Dhirubhai Ambani died in 2002, everything changed. He left behind a business worth billions, but no will, no instructions, no succession plan, just silence and a ticking time bomb. What happened next didn't explode overnight. It was slow, calculated, like a chess game where every move was leaked to the press. At first, there were whispers, small differences in public statements, slight tension at board meetings, executives getting reassigned without notice. Then came the leaks, documents hinting at internal power struggles, rumors that Mukesh had overruled Anil on key decisions, stories that Anil was being frozen out of major deals. The media feasted on it, until finally in June 2005, the facade shattered. Kokilaben Ambani, their mother, stepped forward. She had watched silently as her sons turned into enemies, watched the empire her husband built start to splinter, and she made a move that changed Indian business history. She brokered a peace deal, not in public, but in the privacy of her home. A mother sitting between two billionaire sons, telling them, enough. The result? Reliance Industries would be split. Mukesh would keep control of the core empire: oil, gas, petrochemicals, and refining, the old Reliance. Anil would walk away with telecom, energy, financial services, and media, the new age Reliance. At first, it looked like a win-win. Anil launched Reliance Communications, a massive telecom venture poised to dominate a rapidly digitizing India. His name soared in the press, stocks jumped, his charisma turned him into a business celebrity. India watched as the younger brother started building an empire of his own. But beneath that success, the cracks were already forming. Anil expanded too fast, took on too much debt, telecom wars turned brutal, his ventures in energy faced regulatory pushback, his financial services were battered by market volatility, and by the 2010s, the tide had turned. His companies began hemorrhaging money, courts got involved, debt piled up. In 2019, Anil Ambani stood in court and claimed he was broke, unable to repay even a fraction of what he owed. The man once hailed as India's next big mogul was now facing jail time over unpaid dues. Meanwhile, Mukesh, he stayed quiet, focused, unshaken. He poured billions into telecom, not just as a side venture, but as a national infrastructure play. In 2016, he launched Jio, and with it, wiped out most of his competitors in under 2 years. Cheap data, free voice calls, nationwide coverage. In a country of over 1 billion people, Jio became a necessity overnight. Anil's telecom empire collapsed. Mukesh rose like a fortress. It was the final move in a silent war that had lasted nearly 2 decades. 2 brothers, 2 empires, 1 victor. And yet the emotional toll lingered. Insiders say they stopped speaking entirely. No joint public appearances, no family gatherings. Even at major weddings, they stood apart like strangers. For Mukesh, winning the empire came at a cost: permanent estrangement. For Anil, losing the empire meant more than money. It meant fading into the very shadows his brother now cast across the entire nation. And in a bitter twist of fate, it was Mukesh Ambani, the brother who had won, who later stepped in to help Anil pay off legal debts, to keep him out of jail. Not out of sentiment, perhaps, but out of responsibility, because despite the feud, the distance, the silence, they are still Ambanis, and the legacy still matters. But Mukesh wasn't finished, not even close. He had won the war. Now he was ready to reshape the battlefield itself. And to do that, he had to transform Reliance from an oil giant into something far bigger than anyone expected. When Mukesh Ambani took over the old-school parts of Reliance, oil, petrochemicals, energy, many thought he got the boring half of the empire. They were wrong, because Mukesh wasn't playing the same game as his brother. He wasn't chasing attention. He was quietly building a weapon, and that weapon was Jio. By the early 2010s, India was changing. A new generation was coming online. Data was still expensive, speeds were slow, internet access was limited to the middle and upper classes. Mukesh saw what others didn't. The future of power in India wasn't oil, it was information. So he did something unthinkable. He built a nationwide digital infrastructure from scratch. Miles of fiber optic cable, thousands of cell towers, billions in investment, all before a single customer was signed up. By the time Jio launched in 2016, it had already sunk more money into infrastructure than any telecom company in Indian history. And when it went live, it didn't just offer data, it offered data for free. Free voice calls, dirt cheap mobile plans, entire families switching to Jio overnight. Within 6 months, Jio had over 100 million users. Within 2 years, 400 million. Competitors couldn't keep up. Some slashed prices, some merged, others folded. And Mukesh? He watched quietly as his competition burned. But this wasn't just a telecom story. It was something far bigger. Jio wasn't about phones. It was about control of the pipes that carry India's information, the platforms people use, the ads they see, the content they consume, the shopping they do, and Mukesh made sure no one could stop him. Behind closed doors, Reliance lobbied hard. It leveraged decades of political relationships built since Dhirubhai's time. It secured licenses faster, negotiated better spectrum deals, dodged bureaucratic chokeholds that would have buried lesser companies. One industry insider put it simply, Jio didn't break the rules, they just had the influence to rewrite them. And the ruling class, they welcomed it. Because Jio didn't just create profit, it created national infrastructure. Suddenly, millions of Indians in rural areas had access to fast, affordable internet. School children could learn online. Small businesses could sell on e-commerce platforms. Government services could go digital. Mukesh had positioned himself as both capitalist and nation builder, a man whose fortune now looked like national progress. But there was more. In 2020, just as the world was shutting down during the pandemic, Mukesh did something that stunned the global market. Over the span of just a few months, Jio raised $20 billion from the biggest players in tech. Facebook invested $5.7 billion. Google put in $4.5 billion. Intel, Qualcomm, and Silver Lake all joined the race. It was the largest foreign direct investment into India's tech sector ever. And it made one thing clear. Mukesh Ambani wasn't just India's richest man. He was now at the center of a global digital war. With Jio at the front, Reliance had become a hybrid beast. Part energy giant, part tech monopoly, part media empire. Because while the world watched the telecom boom, Mukesh had quietly bought up TV networks, news channels, movie studios, music labels, and streaming services. He controlled the content, the platforms, the infrastructure. And it wasn't just about profit anymore, it was about influence. Today, over 60% of India's mobile internet traffic runs through Jio's infrastructure. Nearly every Indian who uses a smartphone interacts with something owned or controlled by Reliance. From shopping to payments, movies to news, education to entertainment, it all flows through Mukesh Ambani's empire. And if someone tries to compete, they find themselves facing not just a company, but a machine. A machine with friends in every ministry, every market, every media room. But Mukesh didn't stop there. Because if digital dominance was the future, then succession was the final move. And he was already grooming the next generation to take the throne. On a crowded stretch of land in South Mumbai, where crumbling colonial buildings and glassy new towers fight for space, rises a structure so surreal, so unapologetically extravagant, it almost doesn't look real. It's called Antilia, and it is not a hotel, not a corporate headquarters, not a national landmark. It is the private home of one family, the Ambanis. At first glance, Antilia looks like something out of science fiction. 27 stories tall, with each floor custom designed. Some are double height, some triple, which means in raw scale, the building towers over the skyline like a 60-story skyscraper. But here's the part that stops people in their tracks. The home cost over $2 billion to build, and yet it's not open to the public. It's not even visible from inside. Because behind its glass walls, everything is controlled. The interior is a maze of marble, glass, and gold. 3 helipads sit on the rooftop. A 6-story garage houses over 160 luxury cars. There's a snow room that simulates winter with real artificial snow in a city where summer temperatures regularly hit 104 degrees Fahrenheit. A private ballroom with a ceiling made of crystal chandeliers. Multiple spas, multiple cinemas. In a country where over 200 million people live below the poverty line, Antilia became a statement of something far larger than luxury. Some called it a celebration of India's economic rise. Others called it an insult. The contrast is hard to ignore. Just a few blocks from Antilia's gleaming gates are some of Mumbai's oldest slums, where families live in one-room homes with tin roofs and no running water. When the Ambani weddings light up the night sky with fireworks, the streets below go dark with power outages. To critics, Antilia isn't a home. It's a mirror, reflecting the sharpest edge of inequality in modern India. But for Mukesh Ambani, it's more personal. Antilia was named after a mythical lost island in the Atlantic Ocean, one said to rise out of the sea for only a few moments before vanishing again. Some say the name is a metaphor, that Antilia is both real and unreachable, visible, but untouchable, just like the family inside it. And yet, for all its size, Antilia doesn't feel like a palace. It feels like a fortress, a vertical kingdom in the sky, a monument to power, built not just to impress, but to protect. Because Mukesh Ambani wasn't just building a home, he was building a symbol. Public sightings of Mukesh and Nita Ambani are rare. Their children are even more protected. No reality shows, no tabloid scandals, no open doors. Because the higher you rise, the more carefully you must guard the tower. And yet that isolation comes with a strange weight. Insiders say Antilia often feels eerily silent. The massive halls echo. Entire floors go unused. Security cameras cover every inch. Windows are tinted, curtains drawn. A palace, yes, but also a bubble. A kingdom above the clouds, removed from the very country that built the fortune beneath it. And in 2021, the dream briefly cracked. A black SUV filled with explosives was found parked outside Antilia. Police scrambled. Streets were shut down. Media swarmed. What followed was a chilling saga of corruption, extortion, and alleged police involvement. It wasn't just a security scare. It was a message, one that said, even the highest towers can be touched. The Ambanis tightened their guard. Cameras were added. Protocols changed. The illusion of untouchability momentarily shaken, but the tower still stands. And today, Antilia isn't just a home, it's a monument to something deeper. Wealth at its most extreme, power at its most concentrated. Luxury is so intense, it no longer looks like life, it looks like fiction. And at the very top of that tower, above the snow rooms and chandeliers, one question remains: who will inherit the throne? Because for Mukesh Ambani, building the empire was only half the job. The other half? Passing it on. If you thought royal weddings were extravagant, the Ambanis took it to a whole new level. But when Mukesh Ambani throws a wedding, it's not just a message, it's a declaration of power. In 2018, Isha Ambani, Mukesh's daughter, married Anand Piramal, the son of another billionaire family. The country didn't just watch, it froze. The wedding cost an estimated $100 million. Entire five-star hotels in Udaipur were bought out for days. Private jets filled the city's airspace like migrating birds. Guests included Hillary Clinton, Beyoncé, Amitabh Bachchan, and India's most powerful politicians and CEOs, all seated under the same tent. Beyoncé performed. Shah Rukh Khan danced. The Prime Minister made an appearance. The wedding looked less like a family event and more like a royal summit. A subtle but unmistakable reminder: the Ambanis weren't just rich, they were above money. But behind the performances, the designer outfits, and the 500-dish menus was something much more calculated. This wasn't just a celebration, it was a succession signal. Because Isha wasn't just a bride, she was an heiress. She and her twin brother Akash Ambani had already been quietly inducted into the upper chambers of Reliance. While their father built the empire from oil, they were now tasked with digital dominance, overseeing geo, retail, tech partnerships, and media expansion. Groomed in Ivy League boardrooms, trained in luxury and legacy since birth, the wedding wasn't just a party, it was the crowning of the next generation. In 2019, Akash Ambani married Shloka Mehta, the daughter of a diamond magnate. Another empire fused to the Ambani bloodline. Another wedding, another billion-dollar spectacle, another coded message: we're not fading, we're multiplying. But with each public celebration came private pressure. Because unlike Dhirubhai, who built from nothing, or Mukesh, who fought to keep it, these children were born at the top. There was no mountain to climb, no empire to take, only a throne to inherit and a legacy to uphold. And that comes with a different kind of weight, because when the whole country sees your wedding, they expect to see your leadership next. Mukesh Ambani has never formally announced his retirement, but his moves have spoken louder than any speech. He's already begun dividing responsibilities. Akash was named chairman of Reliance Jio Infocom in 2022. Isha has taken the reins of Reliance Retail, steering billion-dollar partnerships and acquisitions. And Anand Ambani, the youngest son, has been positioned in the energy and sustainability division. carrying the torch of Mukesh's shift from oil to green hydrogen. Each child assigned a pillar of the empire. Each role carefully chosen, because for all their privilege, the Ambani children aren't just heirs. But the path ahead isn't guaranteed. India's business world is shifting. New tech billionaires, startups, political wins, international pressures. Old money is being challenged by new ambition. The question isn't just, can the Ambani children lead? It's, can they evolve? Because Mukesh didn't just build a company. He built an ecosystem, one rooted in influence, timing, and ruthless precision. His empire spans oil, telecom, internet, retail, entertainment, media, data, and digital payments. Keeping it alive means playing 1,000 simultaneous games with regulators, rivals, shareholders, and the public. And every move is being watched. When Anant Ambani got engaged in 2023, it wasn't just a wedding announcement. It was another message, another billion-dollar event, another statement to the world that power is being passed, not lost. Another reminder that in the Ambani family, marriage isn't just personal, it's strategic. But here's what makes it all even more fascinating. Despite the pageantry, despite the attention, the pressure remains invisible. No public fights, no messy scandals, no tell-all interviews. But if you look closely, you can feel it. The quiet burden of carrying a last name worth $100 billion. The need to not just preserve a legacy, but to justify it every single day. And at the center of it all, Mukesh Ambani watches. A father, a titan, a kingmaker. Preparing the stage for his children, not just to inherit the tower he built, but to survive it. At first glance, the story of the Ambani family looks like a triumph. A boy from Gujarat rises from nothing. He builds an empire, his sons take over, his grandchildren inherit the crown. The skyscraper touches the sky. The world watches in awe. But if you look closer, it's not just a story about wealth, it's a story about control, about how far someone will go, not just to rise, but to stay at the top, about what you give up when the world belongs to you, and how much you lose when you stop being a person and start becoming a symbol. Because for the Ambanis, money stopped being the goal a long time ago. This was never just about private jets or billion-dollar weddings or 27-story homes with snow rooms. It was about building a fortress so powerful, nothing could touch it. Not the government, not the media, not time. And yet, even inside the fortress, there are cracks. A brother lost to rivalry, children raised in shadows so vast they can barely be seen without them. A family that lives above a city they no longer walk through. Wealth that inspires both awe and protest. Security guards at every entrance, panic buttons in the master bedrooms, and legacy plans drawn like military strategy. Because when you hold this much power, the one thing you're never allowed to do is relax. That's the secret no one tells you about dynasties. They don't just rule, they defend. Constantly, quietly, at all costs. And as India transforms, digitally, politically, generationally, the Ambanis must adapt again. Not just to preserve what they have, but to prove that their empire is still earned, not just inherited. The children may now wear the crown, but the real test begins when the founder steps aside, when the empire becomes a legacy and the story becomes legend. And for Mukesh Ambani, that moment is coming. He built more than a business. He built a world. Now his family must learn how to live inside it, without getting crushed by its weight. Because in the end, the Ambanis don't just own palaces or pipelines or platforms. They have their own expectations. And that might be the heaviest burden of all.